Welcome to the Dry Fasting Club and the beautiful world of dry fasting. I'm Yannick Wolfe, and I hope to be able to guide you on your dry fasting journey. Before we continue, it's important to note that the information provided here is done to the best of my knowledge and research. However, it should never be taken as medical advice. You should always speak to a medical professional about your decision to attempt fasting in the first place. Please treat this information as entertainment only. I'd also like to let everyone know that if you are interested in fasting, and specifically dry fasting, make sure you join the Dry Fasting Club's Discord group. It's where you'll find the expert fasters that can answer most of your questions, as well as like-minded people that are also on the dry fasting journey. The link to the Discord will be in the notes. Okay, let's get started. Dry fasting is an under-researched form of fasting that is viewed as dangerous by a large portion of the medical community. Nevertheless, progress is often made first, while supporting evidence follows later. I personally view dry fasting as a secret art that has been around for thousands of years, and we catch glimpses of the lost knowledge through ancient texts like the Bible and both Muslim and Jewish religious practices of Ramadan and Yom Kippur. So one of them is a 30-day intermittent dry fast from sundown to sunset, and the other is a 25-hour hard dry fast. So dry fasting, like many other naturopathic treatments, requires someone to be open to trying new things. But not only that, it also requires someone to be aware that modern medicine, although great at treating acute problems, fails pretty drastically at understanding and healing chronic underlying conditions that cause many of our society's illnesses. If you've ever had a skin condition like eczema, you know that you can go to your doctor and he's going to prescribe you, most likely a corticosteroid, to reduce inflammation and itching in that moment. He'll get rid of that symptom, or at least try. But more often than not, the underlying issue is always going to remain. And honestly, usually they progressively get worse. I remember when water fasting and even intermittent fasting used to be viewed as crazy things, or they'd be viewed as being taboo. And honestly, nowadays, it's moving into the mainstream. People's positive experiences have reached such a big critical mass and completely shifted the tide. Everyone's talking about intermittent fasting now. You see it everywhere. But even so, there's very little money to be made in research about, well, nothing really. Because fasting does not force you to buy a product, usually. I know that there's like electrolytes and supplements and there's a big craze going on. So some people are making money on it now. But basically, with nothing really to sell, there's very little incentive for funding trials when it comes to fasting. And even then, the critical mass has been pushed to such a level that even researchers and doctors started taking fasting much more seriously. Although water fasting is growing in popularity, you hear it everywhere and people don't really think you're crazy anymore, dry fasting is still viewed as a death sentence, to put it lightly, by many people. The common idea that you'll die without water in 3 days is used as a fact. And honestly, it creates a bias in most people where they won't even take you seriously once you start talking about not drinking water. I know how hard it is to break that mental barrier when you're trying to start dry fasting. I consider myself a person that's very open to new concepts. And I have this mentality of like, I'll try anything, nearly anything once. But even then, I thought dry fasting was just too much. If I thought that it was too much, where does that leave a majority of people? I honestly think that most people in this world are risk averse. So I fully expect most people to never even take a second look at dry fasting. But I also hope to help those that are desperately seeking something that just might work for their health issues. So this podcast will focus on all things related to dry fasting. The beautiful thing here is that everything related to dry fasting has in some part relevance to all other forms of fasting. I view dry fasting as sort of the final chapter of the fasting journey. No matter where you are on your fasting journey, if you choose to pursue it, you will eventually end up on dry fasting. For most people, the only reason they have not reached it yet is that they're stuck or simply just like not ready. Most people will get stuck at one point and then think that they've reached the finish line with like extended water fasting, for example. But what they don't realize is that they're really just waiting for someone to get them unstuck. And this can come in many different forms. It may be as simple as nudging them into the idea of dry fasting just because they've never even heard of it before. It may require a few anecdotal experiences of, let's say, 5 people telling them over and over that it worked for them. It may require desperation, honestly, after having tried everything else. Or it might require more scientific research to back it up, and and that specific person will not try it until then. No matter where the stuck person is, I hope that I can provide a resource that allows people to learn enough to be able to ask the right questions when it comes to dry fasting. Okay, before this initial episode gets too long, I just want to quickly touch on a few things that make dry fasting so much better than water fasting, in my opinion. These are all important aspects of dry fasting, and we'll dive deeper into them throughout the next episodes. So, dry fasting is superior to water fasting in these main areas: speed of healing and strength of healing. So what do I mean by this? You enter ketosis faster and stronger when you do both food and water deprivation. In fact, there's this thing called the acidotic crisis that occurs around day 7 of a water fast. It's when the ketones in your body accumulate, and they keep on accumulating so much and creating more and more of an acidic environment, to the point where you hit this upper threshold of acidity in your body, and your body starts these new mechanisms to get it under control. So you hit that crisis when you really hit that peak. These mechanisms activate really potent healing and autophagy. In dry fasting, the acidotic crisis is reached on average around day 3. Yeah. So that's why most people look at dry fasting as being about 2 to 3 times stronger than water fasting. Stronger and faster. Dry fasting creates a hypertonic environment, which basically means a higher concentration of solutes in blood plasma due to the lower water content. So think of it like more sodium, potassium, minerals, proteins, blood cells, etc. inside your blood. This activates stronger autophagy. So there's this paper, it's called Hypertonic Stress Promotes Autophagy and Microtubule-Dependent Autophagosomal Clusters. What does this mean? It means that deeper autophagy gets created during this hypertonic stress, and it cleans up the inside of your cells instead of just cells in general. So that's one of the things. A second thing that's great about dry fasting when comparing it to water fasting is that there's basically a smaller toxin load, metabolic water, less dead water, and less deuterium, which is heavy water. So when doing dry fasting, your body has to run on metabolic water more and more as the days progress. And metabolic water is basically water that your body creates. The official definition is metabolic water refers to water created inside a living organism through their metabolism by oxidizing energy-containing substances in their food. Okay, so this basically makes sure you tap into your body's already prepackaged water, which is located in your fat cells. Fat cells are filled with water. This water has already gone through the whole process of purification. So you're not taking in dirty, dead water that requires body cleansing. Think of like everything you can find in your tap water, microplastics, lead, other toxins. So your body has to get rid of them because you're not drinking anything. So the water that your body is using is perfectly clean and it's adapted to you already because your body already purified it. This lowers the toxin load on your body and the effort your body needs to do. And both of these things allow the body to rest and focus more on healing, more so than with water fasting, because the body is able to go into a fully rested state. People who dry fast notice that they just don't get the same hunger cravings that you would while water fasting. This is a huge reason why so many fasters that end up trying dry fasting, they just jump ship and never look back at water fasting again. Also, as we age, we also accumulate deuterium water in our cells. So deuterium water is basically heavy water, and it has an extra hydrogen atom. In fact, there's a study that was directly linked aging with extra water in our cells. They found this correlation that in all their subjects, the older they got, the more water they had in their cells, but they couldn't understand the mechanism. They just found a correlation. What if that's deuterium? And if you do your research, you'll see that it's pretty wild. This heavy water can accumulate and gets harder and harder to release by the body with tons of bad downstream effects. It affects everything from your metabolism to mitochondria to everything. So getting rid of this water can be extremely beneficial. And obviously dry fasting is one of the most effective ways to do so. Okay, we have the third thing is no extra treatments or preparations necessary. What does that mean? So in water fasting, there's a lot of additional treatments that people take to strengthen the detoxification process. So they perform things like enemas, they take baths, they try different mineral waters, they find the right supplements to take so that they can stop feelings of hunger or weakness, or if some people get crazy headaches. You need to like find the right clothes to bundle up if from feeling cold. Some people get extremely cold water fasting. None of this is necessary when it comes to dry fasting, and you still get more healing. So it's less worry, it's less stress. It's just looking so good. The absence of water also neutralizes inflammation like crazy. Inflammation requires water. So water fasting helps a little bit, but like dry fasting is just like inflammation reduction on steroids. It also triggers internal cell mechanisms that do the cleaning, like I mentioned earlier. It's often said that the cell turns into like a mini furnace that does the burning of the toxins instead of just water fasting that clears out the toxins. Here you're actually burning it. Personally, I believe that there are mechanisms at play, like the paper I mentioned earlier, the microtubule-dependent autophagosomal clusters that help burn and rework proteins inside the cells that you can't get with water fasting. So, and that's just one thing that we actually have a paper on, the one that said hypertonic systems create this next level of autophagy. And that's probably just one. We're just stepping into this world. So with that heat that I mentioned, or when I said that you don't have to bundle up, there's a heat that is felt when doing extended dry fasting, which is the opposite of water fasting. The heat is felt by the faster. So it's really cool because even though often you'll check your temperature and your body core temperature is stable, you don't have a fever, but you feel like you have a fever. It's almost like magic. Okay, the fourth thing I have here is weight loss speeds up and stays off. So what do I mean by that? So with water fasting, it's really good for weight loss, and people water fast for a long time and lose a lot of weight. But it's very common to see this weight return quickly after finishing a water fast. When you complete an extended dry fast, the weight stays off much better. The process of burning the fat to create metabolic water does a very good and thorough job of just ripping the fat cells apart. We've all heard that fat cells are never really destroyed, and that's why it's so easy for weight to bounce back, after diets. Well, not the case with dry fasting. The body also adjusts to no water by not burning the muscle if it can avoid it. So it's really just focusing on the fat, and it's really ripping it apart. It focuses strictly on fat reserves because they have both energy and high amounts of water. So not only do you lose weight more effectively while dry fasting, you also conserve muscle better on a dry fast. Honestly, if the weightlifting community found out about dry fasting, the popularity would explode. I bet that there are some who have discovered just how good it is, and they can't talk about it without being viewed as the crazy person. Number 5, I have skin improvement and stronger anti-aging effect. All right, so with that, okay, I guess we'll finish off on this one. So skin improvement and stronger anti-aging effect. So the body creates an insane competition when you basically take away the water, where weak cells lose to healthy cells when it comes to survival. This is just common sense. Take away water and everything is going to compete for the few water molecules that are left. So the result is that your body is left with a higher composition of healthy, strong cells, which then get to replicate because the other ones just couldn't survive the competition. So now you're left with the good ones. So your skin also gets noticeably smoother and it seems younger after a dry fast. And another amazing thing is that it's very common to see people say that cellulite and loose skin gets tighter. So these are things that don't happen on a water fast. You wish they did. Water fasts are amazing, but these are things that just only happen on a dry fast. So that's it for the initial episode introducing you to dry fasting. I just wanted to touch up on it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to help both new and experienced dry fasters explore topics on the beautiful art of dry fasting. I want to dive deeper. I'd like to leave you with this thought of mine based on philosopher Bruno Latour that I just heard on a philosophy podcast recently. And his argument that science has strayed from searching for truth and accuracy. Latour argues that we as humans have never truly been modern and that nature is not something that we can ignore in the pursuit of science. In this context, we can see that postmodernists or self-proclaimed scientific realists argue that fasting is dangerous and does not work and there's not enough research without even considering historical evidence and people's experiences. The same people call naturopaths quacks and line up for the newest medication to treat their symptoms without even considering that the other side may have some sense to it. I'm not saying one side is more right than the other, but what I am saying is that if you can't even imagine a world where maybe your beliefs might be wrong from either side, then you have basically descended into a hive mind-like behavior, similar to religious zealots in the medieval ages. The world is full of unsolved mysteries, and sometimes approaching things using caution, common sense, and a little bit of hope can make all the difference. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and comment if you can. I'd love to see you in the Discord as well. Thank you and good luck on your dry fasting journey.